Good morning, students. Myself, Dr. Vijayendra Singh Tamar, Associate Professor in English. Presently, I am posted at Government College, Gudha in Jhanjhar district. Today, we will discuss about a famous poem by Parthasarathy from Homecoming. This poem is prescribed in English Literature paper first of BA part third. So we can say this video is for the students of BA part third, English Literature students. Now let us talk about the poet. R. Parthasarathy, in short, still alive. His full name is Raja Gopal Parthasarathy. He was born in 1934 in Tiruchirappalli in Tamil Nadu. He was educated at Don Bosco High School, Siddharth College, Mumbai, and at Leeds in UK. And he was a scholar also, and he was good scholarship also there. Then he served as a lecturer in English in Mumbai. Then he joined Oxford University. He moved to New Delhi. There he has been associate professor. Means he has worked at many institutions. And basically he was a teacher. We have to keep in mind this fact about him. His translation into modern English was of the 5th century Tamil epic, The Tale of the Anklet, an epic of South India, brought out by Columbia UP in 1993. And it has received significant awards, including the Sahitya Academy Translation Prize in 1995 and the Association for Asian Studies A.K. Ramanujan Book Prize for Translation in 1996. That is, he was not an ordinary person, but he got name and fame, and also he was awarded sufficiently in his life for his achievements in the field of translation. As we know that he was born in Tamil Nadu, so his mother tongue was Tamil, and he used to write in English. So there was a conflict in his mind which language he should choose, English or Tamil, whether he should write in his native language, motherland, the language that is Tamil or English. And there are a lot of conflict, and this conflict will reflect in his most of works, and the present poem is no exception. So he has written many poems, and one such long poem has been entitled by him Rough Passage. Rough Passage is a long poem, and in this poem, the main theme of this poem is the conflict between language and identity, upon the inner conflict which arises from his having been brought up in two opposite cultures, namely Western culture and his native Tamil culture. This conflict is reflected in this work. And what is the outcome? It is up to the, you can say, audience to decide. Now let us come to the present poem. As I have told you that the poet Parthasarathy has written a long poem, Rough Passage, and it is one of his most famous work. This poem is divided into 3 parts. First is Exile, second Trial, and third one is Homecoming. The present poem, which has been entitled From Homecoming, forms section 12 of Homecoming. That is the third part of his long poem, Rough Passage. Here the poet trains his vision on a teacher critic who, having tried his hand at creative writing, finds himself a failure. He is left honing his skills and his language, commenting on the work of other poets, those who have succeeded where he failed. Actually, the poet is describing himself, his own personality in this poem. He makes a detachment from him and he sees as if the poet is sitting and he is describing objectively what he finds. And he has used very a kind of failure image of himself. This is a poem Self-disparagement, means tiraskar. It is a poem of self-disparagement, we can say. Now let us come to the poem and this the text of the poem. Language of the poem is quite easy. He said, I see him now sitting at his desk. Now the poet, before we start poem, we should see that the poet I is also poet and him is also poet. And I, the poet who is composing, is describing Parthasarathy who has achieved so far or what he has done in the field of poetry so far. So I see him now sitting at his desk. Means poet Parthasarathy who is now composing the poem sees the poet Parthasarathy who has now achieved so far. And he is sitting at the desk. The door is open. It is evening. See the language, very quite easy, a natural, you can say, scenery, and the poet is described very easily what he sees. On the lawns, the children's play. Children are playing on the lawns. He went for the wrong gods from the start. Now he is making comment on his own personality. That is the conflict. From the very beginning, he had chosen wrong gods. That is, from language, whether in Western culture or Eastern culture, you can say. And marriage made it worse. And the second tragedy in his life, what he, according to him, is he got married and that worsened the situation of his life. He hadn't read his Greek poets well. He says he has not worked hard in the past. If he has understood the Greek poets whom he had read in his beginning of career, he would have made a better choice. Better to bury a woman than marry her. In Greek literature, there is a reference that to Helen, that it is better to bury a woman than to marry. If you marry, a lot of problem will come and the result will be very bad for the person. So as he chosen the wrong path, wrong decision in the beginning, so it changed his whole life. Now he teaches, as he could not achieve name and fame in that field, so now he has become a teacher. He is now teacher. As a teacher, he is earning his livelihood. Review verse written by others, and also he has become a critic, a teacher critic, and he make critical analysis of the works written by, composed by other poets. Is invited to conferences and attends them, as he has become a name in the field of critic. So he is invited in seminars, conferences, and he goes there. How long it had taken him to learn, he had no talent at all. And he shockingly says that it took a long time, plenty of time was taken by his mind to understand that he is a talentless person. He has no talent of his own. Although words came easy, although he can write easily without any problem. He says one can be articulate about nothing. If a person has talent, he can write about nothing, so many things. Or was it simply his God had left him, or it is because he is talentless that the inspiration which he might have got from the gods had not inspired him. That is, he is writing without any inspiration in his life. Now, as he is a teacher peddling his bicycle glasses, he asked. Now, as a teacher, so he keeps on riding on his bicycle, that is pedaling and moving forward. This is a symbol that he keeps on moving forward in his life. What's it like to be a poet? Now he tries to know what a poet means. What is the importance of a poet? I say to myself, the son of a bitch. Very disparagement see on the part of the poet, and he calls himself the son of a bitch. Fattens himself on the flesh of dead poets. It is a symbol of metaphorical language. It means he writes his review on the material provided by other poets. Lines his pockets with their bloods. The same thing. That is, he gets energy, name, and fame and material from the other gods. He himself doesn't have even slightest of talent. But he wants to say that there are many critics who cannot compose even a single line, but they become great critics. Now from his fingertips ooze ink and paper. That is, he writes as he sweats on the dung heap of old texts and obscure commentaries. Means he studies the old books, old texts, and unclear commentaries, and makes comments on the poems produced before him for his critical analysis. His eyes peel off. That is, he watches very carefully. Where would his eminence be but for the poets who splash about his in the Hellespont or burned in the Java Sea? These two are again metaphorical use of language. Hellespont, the ancient name of the Dardanelles Strait in northwest Turkey, connecting Sea of Marmara with the Aegean Sea, and the Java, a big island of Indonesia. The idea is the region where the poets have written or composed. If they would not have supplied him the material, he would not have been even known to anybody. He would have been a unknown personality. With this, the poem comes to an end. It is very short poem, just a few lines. As far as the full poem is concerned, it is very big poem. It is divided into three parts: exile, trial, and homecoming. And even homecoming, that part consists of many sections, and out of many, only one section is prescribed in our syllabus. Now, let me tell you something about this poem. In this section 12 of the poem, Homecoming, there are passages. Poet celebrates the eminence and relevance of the poet. Who is a poet? Whether poet is relevant or he is very important. The poet talks of himself in the most objective manner when he asserts, I see him now sitting at his desk. As I told you, it is a poem in which the writer is Parthasarathy himself, and about whom he is writing is also Parthasarathy. So the present composer or the composer of this poem has detached himself from real Parthasarathy, and Parthasarathy is presented as he is sitting at his desk writing poems or teaching. He claims that he made the mistake of opting for the wrong gods from the start. He had gone for the wrong kind of inspiration. His course of action was erroneous right from the beginning. That is, he has chosen the Western culture, English as the medium, and it was wrong on his part from the very beginning. It began with his experiments with English language. It started when he set off to England for his English education. Another major obstacle to his career was his having got married. He states that he should have paid heed, care to the classical poets. It was better to bury a woman than marry her. He should have got inspiration from them and should have made it clear that marriage is always a hindrance in the path of a person's progress. Now, as he has failed in this area of interest, namely poetry, he teaches, that is, he has become a teacher. Parthasarathy seems to echo George Bernard Shaw, who said, "He who can does, he who cannot teaches." As we see in our Rajasthan also, young people decide for various jobs, and when they do not get any job, they become teacher. So Bernard Shaw has also stated the same view. He teaches probably as he had learnt from experience that poetry cannot provide him with a source of livelihood. It makes it very clear that if you will write poems, you cannot earn your livelihood. For livelihood, you have to work hard, and for earning livelihood, he has become teacher. He now tries to prove his mettle, that is mind, by reviewing verse written by others. In other words, circumstances had made him a critic. This label of being a critic had endured him with invitation to conferences, as he has earned a name and fame in this field. So he has been invited in seminar and conferences for his critical comments on various issues, various compositions composed by other writers. It had taken him quite some time to realize that he had no talent and wondered how words flowed so easily. He concentrated on himself and he disparagementally, that is insulting himself, he says he came to know after so much time that he is talentless person. He substantiates this by claiming one can be articulate about nothing. Articulate as an adjective signifies spoken so as to be intelligible and also means expressed in article or in separate items or particulars. So one can write without having any topic on nothing if one has talent. The poet means to say that a person can endeavor to sound intelligible about anything or nothing, and one can compartmentalize certain subjects so as to sound like a scholar. Perhaps in this regard, the role of a critic suited him better. He continues his self-interrogation. Was it his God had left him? Was he left with no source of inspiration? But when he says his God had left him, it means he is not getting any kind of inspiration to write his poems. Again, at this juncture, we understand what the poet meant by saying that he followed the wrong gods from the start. He had the wrong source of stimulation. By peddling his bicycle glasses, the poet implies the progress of his vision. Just as a bicycler pedals to move forward, the poet pedals to move his vision forward. That is, he keeps concentrating on his target and keeps going, trying to go forward and forward in his field. As we go through the poem, one can discern distinction between the I and the he. The I stands for the current role of the speaker in the present tense, that of a critic, and he shows the speaker in a mode of transition from the poet to the critic. The answer to the question, what's it like to be a poet, is answered by the speaker in uncertain terms. That is, the poet has tried to give the answer of this question, what's it like to be a poet. He first goes on to reprimand, that is rebuke himself as a critic. He chides himself as a critic in an act of vituperation. Parthasarathy terms the critic as a son of a bitch who fattens himself on the flesh of dead poets. To be more precise, the critic is a parasite who depends directly on the poet. Therefore, the critic who takes himself to be his eminence has no significance but for the poet. That is, he is eminent, he is very important because of other poets. If there were no other poets, he would have been zero, he would have been insignificant. He is like a parasite who lives on others. In castigating terms, the critic is likened to a fly that feeds on the dung heap of old text and obscure commentaries. His eyes peel off, reality presents itself with indubitable clarity. That is, he concentrates on the old text, what has been written in the past, composed in the past, etc. etc. Where would the so-called critic be if it were not for poets that splashed about in the Hellespont or burned about in the Java Sea? This is the direct allusion to the classical poets and the modern poets. One term stands for the ancient poets and other term for the modern poets. The poet thus drives home the significance Parthasarathy imparted to the poet. What the poet wants to say is this, that for a poet or a critic, the composition of the other poets is very important. If he does not get the works of others, he will be nothing, zero. Here is the importance of the critic. And indirectly, the poet becomes more and more important. Thank you very much.